Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Aquarius Rising Africa with me, Chantelle, definitely your hostess with the mostess. Welcome back to my show with beautiful Jamie J. And wow, what a series we've had so far, discussing MK Ultra programming, pre-birth programming. I mean, the list goes on and on. To tonight, today, I'll say tonight, it's night for me. We're going to be definitely talking about, well, last week we actually spoke about prenatal birth trauma, trauma in the womb, and especially when it comes to hierarchy kids that have been programmed, etc., like that, etc. So I think what we're going to be doing tonight with Jamie is just taking it the next step. So what happens once these kids have been born? Infant trauma. Oh, so buckle up, buttercups, grab your chai, grab your tea, and join
I
us for
actually have two
another
coffees ready to go. So
yeah, another awesome episode of this of Disclosure with Jamie J. Jamie, it's so good to have you back. How are you, beautiful?
thank you. I'm kind of tired today, but let's just jump right into it and I'll see what I can
Absolutely.
remember with the brain cells I have awake. Um, yeah, something I kind of forgot to mention last week that was on my mind that was related to the prenatal stuff was we talked about the survivor guilt from being multiple um, fertilized eggs and then they'll abort some of them and then like even an embryo can have like guilt for being the one that was alive, and then once the child's born they'll tell them stuff like, oh, you survived because you like stole all the nutrients from the womb and that's why you were the greedy one, and like they're already guilting and shaming the child for even being alive as though they had taken from somebody else to be alive. And so it's all the stuff they start doing as soon as the baby is born is really connected to the stuff even happening in the womb. And another thing I kind of forgot to mention with the survivor guilt is also the surviving twin syndrome. And there's actually quite a few books on it. I haven't read the books myself yet, but I've read books by survivors who did read those books and found them really relevant and really helpful, because even on a pre-verbal level, like when you've been had multiple pregnancies, and there's actually a lot more multiple pregnancies than people know, whether it's intentionally aborted or like spontaneously aborted. Like it's actually quite common for multiple eggs to be fertilized and then only one make it. And of course, with all this in vitro stuff they're doing now, they have an unnatural way of making that happen more than it would in nature. So a lot of people, even if they're not survivors, might have some survivor's guilt or birth trauma or surviving twin syndrome, which is something maybe like a lot of people want to look at, whether you're a survivor or not. It might just be something relevant that's affecting you today. There was a girl and her name was Sharon, and now I'm forgetting her name. So maybe I'll just come back to it in a second, who wrote a book about birth trauma, that I've talked with a little bit, and she seems to really know about this stuff. So I think all people can maybe look into this. I think we all have some birth trauma, especially the way that birth is done in the hospital. I know you did a show with Sean
Absolutely.
McCann and another person. Oh gosh, I'm just so tired for names today. It's like the specific name part of my brain is not awake. But there's other people that have really done a lot of work on birth trauma, and we all have birth trauma because of the way
Yeah.
that the hospital's set up. And so a lot of this um, normalization of these really stupid and ineffective anti-nature ways of having children, like almost every single thing is done in an unnatural way. And actually, Sean McCann would be a better person to go over all of that because he's a little more educated on like the actual drugs they use and the procedures and stuff like that. But everything from the ultrasounds to the way the person's laying in delivery to the bright lights to smacking the baby right away to injecting it with vitamin K to removing it from the mother right away, cutting the umbilical cord right away. Like it all goes against nature. Like our Western medical system is completely, absolutely a satanic inversion of the natural order of birth. And so I would say like every person actually has some form of birth trauma and pre-verbal somatic trauma that affects the way our society is run today.
I absolutely, definitely want to say that I absolutely 100% agree with you in terms of that. And when you start studying as a healer, you start looking at womb trauma and the woundology that occurs within the womb. And when we look at ancestral or generational trauma, right? Think about how trauma is passed down generationally between women, right? Um, and every time, okay, but let's just not go that far back for a minute. So let me just keep it to what's happening, let's say, with the woman. She has three children. Each of those babies are in the same womb. Each baby has a different birth experience, right? So the trauma of the person, the previous birth, for example, is still contained within the womb of the mother, which the next child then
Mm.
absorbs, and the next child then absorbs. And not just physically in that way, but also the trauma from previous generations, their unhealed wounds, they're especially feminine, because we're looking at feminine energy here. Feminine energy equals emotional energy, right? Feminine emotion, mother, all the same entity from the same essence. So when we look at that and we look, it's not just our own trauma, it's generational trauma that comes through all of that as well. And we have to be aware of that. And then when we start realizing that, as we then heal ourselves as women, as mothers, we start actually healing that generational trauma for all our previous ancestors as well. So if those of us who are in this moment having that, right, and experiencing that, I just want to say as well, this is an opportunity for all of us to heal that for all generations, actually. The buck stops here. Trauma doesn't continue from here onwards, and we are able to also heal it for the previous generations. Very important to look at, because that's so, so, so real. What happens prior to the child actually being born. Everything is already conceptualized in that little baby.
Yeah, epigenetics is like really, really something important that people need to understand. I'll just give like a really brief explanation for people that I'll just go really brief. It's like a big topic, but epigenetics is basically the way that, there's always a nature nurture debate, but basically the environment affects the genes, and then it's passed on genetically, and it's turning genes on or off depending on the environment, and then that state gets passed on. So it kind of destroys the nature nurture debate, because it's not a dialectic. It's like they actually affect each other. And
Right,
another thing that people might want to look into is something called optogenetics, which is actually showing how light can turn genes on or off. And so it's connected optogenetics, and it's like a really, these are big things probably to study, but just really quickly, it's how light can affect genes being turned on or off, and they're actually using that on people a lot now. But this kind of connects back to some of the prenatal programming, where they can use light on the fetus, like to make it go towards the light or away from the light, or like put unnatural light in there. Even something like an ultrasound is going to affect the gene expression of a child, because it's going to turn genes to on or off with light. Anyways, that's just a really brief summary that I won't go into here, but people probably really want to look up epigenetics and optogenetics. And so this connects to what Kathy O'Brien talks about too, about, people being autogenic for people to dissociate and stuff. And so people always wonder like why certain people are able to be programmed and put through MK Ultra programs or satanic ritual abuse, and others aren't, and others either have like extreme dysfunctional trauma or die, and then other people seem to be able to be programmed, and it's because of the epigenetic component, which actually primes people to be able to endure the environment that their parents had endured. And so that's why people are primed to dissociate, especially through sexual abuse. And that's why they're always promoting the sexual aspect of all of this abuse, is because it actually has like a really epigenetic component to it. And so, yeah, that's that stuff. And again, I think we talked last time on the show about how the same water that's like in the mother's cells and then in the womb and then Chrissy will be like, that water actually never starts new. It's always passed on. And so water is imprintable, like what you were saying. And
Mm.
the imprint, I didn't think about that. That's really interesting what you just said about the first pregnancy imprinting for the second one. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, how true is that? You know what I mean?
Absolutely, and not just the physical um, pregnancy that you're having, but as I said, what's even more fascinating to me, and I've done my own informal studies on this. As I understood this, I then started working with a number of women in generations and asking what had happened previous in their generations and how the trauma was carried down through the womb. So I have a lot of statistics on that. Nothing that I've, it's all my own studies, but that's how, because my work is pretty much I created. I've designed the way that it operates. I kind of do my own studies and I use myself as much as what I can as a guinea pig. Um, but it's been fascinating to see how the similarities, and then when you have especially a traumatic pregnancy with
Mm-hmm.
someone, like let's say mother's had a lot of pain, she had to have a forceps delivery, or there was twins and she lost one of the twins in the womb or something like that. That womb trauma is unbelievable because remember, in water, energy travels four times faster in water than in any other in air. So the trauma of losing your little twin when you already in haven't even taken your first breath yet is so severe. It's like the cells like constrict, right? And that energy remains within, as you say, the water doesn't get regenerated. The water remains there and it's amplified by four times amplified in water. So that poor little baby, if it's been hearing fighting and shouting going on in its environment, I do something called the womb regression. I regress my clients back to the womb. And I'll tell you something, you can, all of them can hear when they tuned into that frequency, they hear conversations happening between their parents. They know who their siblings are. They know what they're coming out to. They know whether they are welcome in this world, whether they
Mm-hmm.
are beautifully received by parents, or if they're fighting, or you'll often find that if a baby did not want to enter, they'll often have trauma in the womb and maybe die or be a near loss or something like that. The mom had to really hold that baby not to miscarry it or something like that. All of these things, if you've had a miscarriage as a woman, and you fall
Mm-hmm.
pregnant afterwards, if you had four miscarriages, that energy is stored within the energy of the womb. And that is why healing is so important for us. We have to look at each and every one, let's say, of those pregnancies, of those experiences, of the loss, because that's one thing we as women don't acknowledge is that loss of a miscarriage. I've had a miscarriage, and I want to
Mm-hmm.
tell you, it is not, it's
Society is pretty harsh on that. Like it's almost like they're just like, oh well, it didn't really count. You can have another one. Like I can't believe some of this. I haven't experienced it myself, but I know people who have, and just it's the way other people have no empathy and are so dismissive of it that I find really shocking.
That's what you know what was interesting for me? I was a healer already, and a lot of my clients at the time were coming through and had miscarriages and really taking it badly. And I mean, obviously every client for me that comes there has their own pain, and I can identify with what that is, no matter what that might be. But granted, For me, it was much more understandable that when your baby is stillborn, that it's much more traumatic than having a miscarriage when you are 6 or 8 weeks pregnant, until I had one. And for me, it's like, firstly, your whole body changes in that time. Hormonally, your body changes. Your body is pregnant. That's a very different feeling. And only someone who's been pregnant can identify with that feeling. So your body's preparing itself to be a mummy for this little baby that is coming into the world. Okay. So I want to just say, emotionally, hormonally, cellularly, there's a change in your body. And women, I think, can identify with that more strongly than what men can, because even if a woman hasn't been pregnant, like just her menstrual cycle, for example, the changes your body goes through when you're menstruating, every woman feels. So we understand how the body changes hormonally. That is a big thing. Secondly, it's like, in the time that you're pregnant, your whole future changes. Your ideals change. You're creating space. Your future changes to accommodate, bring in this little being, and suddenly it's gone.
Yeah, like I think of all the mental investment in the
Totally.
planning and the futurizing,
Guys,
and like
yeah.
it's like you're mentally taking that, creating internally as well, and believe based on a belief of what the future will be, and then putting all that emotional and intellectual mental investment into the planning is the part that always to me seemed really obvious, but
It's yeah, but it's so much more. It honestly is. It's, as I said, it's more than anything. It's the changes that occur in your body. It's the joy, the preparation, the nesting. Your body
Mhm.
starts nesting, and suddenly, boom, it's gone. That is a very traumatic thing for a woman as well. And then also, as you say, the mental state. And again, I can definitely identify with the fact that the longer you are pregnant, you also start forming more of a connection to the fetus itself, not just the idea, but then you actually start feeling the fetus and you actually start connecting with that little thing inside of you. That is a miracle, right? And especially if you've had issues falling pregnant every time. I mean, I've
Yeah,
not
that
had.
anxiety
Hmm.
of it
And when
happening
you,
again, right? Like imagine that being imprinted with the second. And I just have so much respect. I know people that have had like really horrible miscarriages. Like I knew one woman who had in vitro, she had twins. I think one of them they tried to deliver and then it died, and then they tried to do an emergency C-section when she was already in labor, and they hacked her all up, and then the other baby, like it was just the other baby died as well. It was just a horrible experience after she had been through all this horrible in vitro, and like it was just a nightmare, and it ended so badly. It was like I just felt so bad for this woman, and she actually went and got pregnant again and ended up being able to have the child. But I just was had so much respect because I was like, if that was me, like I don't know if I would be willing to like try that again. But like, you know what I mean?
listen,
Somebody
yeah.
willing to do that after having that
Oh,
experience,
yeah.
like the courage, I just had to respect that. Like it's wow.
I I absolutely agree. I've also worked with people over the years who've had in vitro who've not been able to conceive. It's a huge thing. And what a woman's body goes through with that in vitro, it's all these fake hormones. I don't even know what you're injected with, but the bloating, I mean, my one friend, her whole face like was
And it's
puffy.
painful. Like people don't realize
Yeah,
it's actually very painful. It's not just like an easy procedure. It's a
yeah,
nightmare like to go
it
through.
is. And very traumatic, very emotionally draining. And then,
And they pay a lot of money. Like a lot of people use their life savings that could have been like a down payment on a house or a university degree or, you know.
there are no guarantees, most
Yeah.
definitely. Isn't it interesting in a world that there's so many children that need homes, there are equally as many people who would love to have a baby. Isn't that like so interesting that, yeah.
Yeah, and I know abortion's like a touchy topic, but you know, it's like just thinking about again, like that after having that happen in the womb, like imagine another pregnancy, like that, you know, implicit threat that that might happen again to the one who's in there. I think they're going to pick up on that as well. And one of the best documentaries I've seen was by an abortion doctor who didn't think anything of it. Like he just had complete medical training. He was completely detached from any spiritual, like he just was like, it's my job, it's what I do. Like he had no feeling, whatever. And then his wife was trying to have a baby and they couldn't get pregnant. And then every day he was going to work and killing other people's babies. And he just, for him, like it actually, he just had this like pivotal moment where he's like, what am I doing? Like literally, like
Wow.
you know, like it's just such a weird, like amazing story of somebody in that position being like, I can't even get my own wife pregnant, but like I'm literally eliminating other people's pregnancies every day for my job. And he just realized how insane that is. And and then he had to quit his job because he had moral scruples, right? But he didn't before that until he had the experience of not being able to actually have a child himself. So yeah, I think with that in the womb, and then yeah, I think that's really interesting. I just before I forget, I did find the name of the book here. It's Heal Your Birth, Heal Your Life by Sharon King. And
Heal your
I
what? Sorry? Heal your what?
Heal Your Birth, Heal Your
Yeah.
Life by Sharon King. I haven't read the book, but I've talked to this lady in a course that I'm in, and she seems like a really smart lady. And she's really, really passionate about this kind of stuff, really passionate about speaking about circumcision. And I'm trying to get her and Sean on a show. But, anyways, I think her book's probably really good about this specific stuff of going back about the different types of birth traumas because there's different types, right? So it's very specific. And then the other person that I found was Janice Barcello. She's done like major research on everything to do with birth. And so she's like another really good person for people just to look at her work because she's really dedicated her life. I think you'll really like her if you haven't heard about her before. I think it'll be
I
right up
actually
your
haven't.
alley.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
no, she's got like you'll probably want to have her on the show for sure. And I think Sean could probably connect you guys. I think they did a show together. So yeah, this stuff's all, you know, it's like I don't even have kids, but like it affects everybody, right? Like this isn't just for people that have children. Like it actually affects our whole social structure. And you know, somebody like me who studies like satanic ritual abuse and MK Ultra and specific programming and how much they use this knowledge because they know the effects that it's going to have, it's relevant to everybody because we're all living in a society that's affected by these procedures because we're all living in the same soup as people who have had traumas in their own womb or traumas when they were in the womb. And so like it's being reenacted out on the entire society. And this is actually one of the things that the controllers know exactly how this is going to affect people. Like they need to do it in order to maintain a society where they even can exist as controllers. So this birth trauma stuff is really, really like relevant to everybody. It's not just something for a specific class of people to care about. Like it's affecting everyone. And to like carry on from where we were last week talking about womb stuff, you know, so if going into like more of the MK Ultra type stuff. So, you know, once the baby's born, they you know, humans aren't that different. Like there's developmental stages and most humans are at the same stage at the same age, like especially for the first 7 years of life. And that's when most of the programming goes in for people is before the age of 7. Like that's kind of the prime area. You know, I think it was Himmler or Hitler or somebody said like, give me a child before the age of 7 and I'll show you the man. Like that is the age when the brain is in an altered hypnagogic state. They're almost in an alpha state. They're programmable, right? Like, and so it doesn't matter what you say. You know, this is why people, it's like, do what I say, not what I do. But like children learn through osmosis and social learning and through role modeling. And they've taken all the role modeling research and they use this even for training troops. Like that's why they started having the invention of the drill sergeant, because they're like, they needed to have a role model of like, this is the archetype of who you need to aspire to be. And so like that was all based on research of how children learn. And when people are under stress, they also go into an altered state. So that's when they start doing the social learning through role modeling, which now, of course, they have celebrities and influencers and stuff, and they know that's way more powerful than, just telling somebody something. They're like, little kids are literally just observing, even though they don't have a narrative in their mind, they just absorb it straight in. They don't have they don't have the part that's making a narrative about what they're seeing. It just goes right in without question before the age of 7. And so all of these programs for like occult families, generational abuse, they know the specific marker ages that they need to do these specific programs in when that child is in the programmable state, and then that will set up what they need, and they can access and add to it later in life, but they need to have that right away. So when you see movies like The Born Identity or La Femme Nikita, where they like take people in their 20s and turn them into a super soldier, it's like, that's just that's they're leaving out the child abuse part, because they can't actually do that to somebody. I mean, they can program people a little bit with drugs and stuff now, but like, they need to program the mind as it's forming. They don't go back later and reform a mind into a program. They do it as it's forming. So these developmental traumas that they do in the first years of life are what set the stage later on. And I think on your show with Rachel, you were talking about the mistrust programming, and we can talk about that a little bit, because that's a really big one. And like, we even see that, what we were discussing about being played out in these survivor communities, but like, the mistrust is that can be traced back to some of this prenatal stuff and like just the neonatal type of programming.
That's incredible. And it's so true, but it also brings me, as you're talking, to thinking about what Fiona Barnett was talking about also. And I know on Jesse, and when we do our shows with Jesse, it's not just the programming, but they literally will go and sometimes try and alter the fetuses
Yep.
while they are in the womb as well. And
Mm-hmm.
one famous one that, in fact, Fiona Barnett speaks about is Nicole Kidman, who's actually, and because she was in the system with Nicole, right? They were kids and blah, blah, blah together. Um, she speaks about Anthony Kidman, who was also Fiona's chief abuser, Nicole's father, how she was actually born a boy. And while she was in the womb, her father was doing these changes on her, um, transgender,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you call it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
This
Um,
research is so much what they're showing us now. It's like when they show us old tech and act like it's new. All this transgender stuff coming out now, like
yeah,
they've been doing it for
it's
a long
for the
time. And
longest
like,
time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it doesn't surprise me at
All
all
we
what you're
have
saying.
to do is go back and look at the old American presidents' wives. Come on. Now
And
that
why
we
is it
have
called a
eyes
drag
to
queen?
see,
Because the
right?
queens actually were men.
There you go. There you go. So we have to know this is older than the ark, right? The stuff, and it's exactly that. But it's so interesting because you can see, like with Nicole, um, I mean, if you look, she's tall and slender, but if you look at her back, she's built like a boy, like
Mhm.
straight, right? Yet she's got the breasts and the what have you, but her innards are masculine, male, which is why she
Mhm.
wasn't able to have kids. So that's what we're hearing. That's what Fiona Barnett said.
Mhm.
And it
And that's
makes
a
a
lot
lot.
more common than people think.
Yeah,
It's kind
exactly.
of like, you know, you can go
And I
back and
think
see it in hindsight.
a lot of these celebrities that we in fact saying of transgender, I think a lot of them have actually gone through what Nicole's gone through or
Hmm.
similar stuff already in the
Absolutely.
womb. So they might have been born the opposite gender, but they would have been tampered with. And Jesse was speaking as well about they literally put on like pigs' noses and pigs' feet, little hooves on the kids. And they obviously do these demonic bloody rituals and stuff with these little things coming out. And isn't it interesting that we're seeing also a lot of these um, hybridized humans into animals, whatever, you find a lot of pigs. And we now again we're talking about pig DNA and human DNA being very similar. And when you're looking really at the gross parts of the occult with the child hunting, very often the remains are fed to the pigs.
Hmm.
So eating humans, eating pigs, we're eating ourselves, our own DNA, you know?
Yeah, and in Canada we have the Picton pig farm, which we could do another show on another time. But yeah, that's actually a theme. Yeah, so I don't know which direction you want to take the show because it's really huge, but like definitely there's stuff like the CRISPR technology that using hormones or stress or light or frequencies in the womb, you can change the gender that way. And I think a lot of people that feel like the wrong sex as adults may have had something done like that to them. That's why they're like, no, like they really believe they are the opposite gender because they may have been when they initially came into the womb and had this stuff done to them, and that's why they want to transition older. And then with the celebrities, like, I mean, the stuff. I mean, well, first of all, real women have cellulite. Like, I don't care how skinny you are. If you don't have one dimple, like that is almost the giveaway. When you look at all these Sports Illustrated models and the Victoria's Secret and all of them, like it's like that is those are lady boys, you know what I mean? Like, and
Totally.
and that's how you can tell because real women actually have like some fat on them. Even if you're a slim woman, you still
It's
have some
true.
actual fat, and that's actually like one of the main. There's quite a few different markers. So yeah, there's that kind of stuff, the genetic stuff. That like they also inject. Like I read one book by somebody from a bloodline family who said like they have like DNA from Einstein and different people, and they inject that um, into the fetuses. However that works, I don't really know, but they do stuff like that. Like they want to combine the DNA of like extraordinary anomalous people for like enhancing intelligence. There's also three DNA babies they're making now, which the symbology was when Queen Elizabeth was lighting up the three-strand DNAs on the oak trees because they have a way to make three-parent babies now. So we can talk about that kind of stuff, but like I kind of like I feel like I'm just going so many different directions, but like more I thought we'd talk more about like some of the actual like age specific programmings through the MK Ultra programs,
Yes,
although it's
that's
very
perfect.
connected. And the transgender thing is like they've done a lot of research. If you read Kurth Barker's books, which I don't know what happened to Kurth Barker, but if you're out there, like please come out for interviews because this guy has so much information and he wrote really amazing books and then he disappeared. And I just wish somebody could find Kurth Barker because that's the person you'd want to interview. But he was talking about surgical mutilation, and they've done a lot of research of how that affects people psychologically, like for being order followers or slaves or just having learned helplessness internalized so that they'll go along with these agendas. And so part of this transgenderism is that it has to do with the psychology of investment. So like once you've actually done something you can't undo, you have to stay in a state of denial where you can't actually look at the option of
Right.
not being that because it doesn't exist anymore. And so you actually stay in a fractured dissociative state of consciousness because you can't actually let your mind go to like what's really happened. Like you have to stay in a certain mindset to not go insane. And they know this. And so one of the ways, like I said, they want to invert everything. And so the any way, like making somebody transgendered from birth, and sometimes they don't even tell the person. You know what I mean? And they say it's like botched circumcisions and stuff, which I don't know if I believe that all the time. They were probably trying to do that, I think, in a lot of the cases as well. They want to invert everything because it gives them a power differential because a person's not playing with a full deck when stuff's off by even a percentage. Every calculation will be wrong.
Wow. It's amazing how everything just falls into place because what you were saying earlier on that really just, oh, and wow, was when you were talking about, I think I'm not sure, I wanted to ask you, is it the CRISPR technology you were saying that they were using while a child is still in the womb, and that gives it really sort of gender confusion? So really when
And
you
other
come up,
things.
wow, that absolutely hits home. That resonates so much to, when we're hearing about so many kids, not so many, but there are certain kids that they just didn't feel right in their body. They did. And it's so true what you're saying, because once you've made that decision,
Well,
you
or it's
can't
made
turn
for
back.
you and you don't even know. You just can't
Exactly.
ever not, you can't actually ever know without going crazy.
And you have to stay in that state of denial, which means you always at the energetically, think energy again. I always think energy. You
Hmm.
always going against what your essence is. You always fighting. Think about what that does energetically. You're exhausted, you're angry, you're not in the
Hmm.
right. You
And you're
cannot be at
programmable.
peace. Exactly. So then you become compliant.
Yeah.
That is exactly what this is about. Freaking hell.
Well, and
And
also, sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, 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 carry on, carry on,
I
carry on.
also they want people to not understand what they're looking at. So when people are looking at beautiful, the Victoria's Secret models or Sports Illustrated, like the pinnacle of this female beauty, but it's not a female. Like the subconscious mind, the primal animal part of the mind that recognizes what you should mate with, like subconsciously knows those hips are not that are square, or you know what I mean? Even though you're looking at the breasts, which are not real and stuff, it's so the conscious mind seeing one thing and the unconscious mind is seeing something else, and you're kind of in duality with yourself, and then they're telling you what you're looking at, like they're saying this is the most beautiful woman, or they just program in what's attractive. That's why they can take the magazine and say this month this is the sexiest man, and everyone says, oh yeah, that's the sexiest man. It's like, well, did you decide that yourself, or did you just get programmed that that's the sexiest man? Like, and so when they have all the transgender people and they're presenting them as something they're not, it's like that creates a power differential where you think you're looking at something, they're telling you what you're looking at, so you're not using your own locus of control and discernment. You're looking for an outside expert to tell you that's a beautiful woman, that's a sexy man. And also when you see these fake pregnancy bellies they wear, this is on a really skinny woman with no cellulite and like anorexic looking little boy body with a baby bump. That doesn't exist in nature. Okay, like a real pregnant woman gets weight put on everywhere, not just the belly, and keeps the rest of her body slim, like as though she has an eating disorder. Like
Exactly.
that doesn't even exist, but that's the standard. And then they put these people in magazines saying, oh, this is the pregnancy. And it's like the one I had a really good picture of. I don't know, you could look up David Beckham, Victoria Beckham's pregnancies. Like she's clearly looks like an Ethiopian starving, like those off the ads for starving children, with her baby belly, like as if the baby's not starving in that body. You know what I mean? It's like not even consideration for the baby might actually be hungry. It's like you're supposed to not eat when you're pregnant. You know what I mean? So why are they showing that as the norm? It's again putting
Exactly.
people off kilter all the time.
You know what I find interesting as well, when we're looking at, and you were saying about how many of these models and actresses have these fake boobs.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they've made fake boobs attractive or a thing for women as well because of the transgenderism. So they
Mm-hmm.
had to make the boobs look good because now fake boobs are a normal thing. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
looking at a girl who's had a boob job or something, you like, of course, you can see when there's fake boobs, but now it's become the mindset that, well, women are having fake boobs too. There's no such thing as thinking, oh, must be a man, so the boobs are fake. But that
Right.
was, in my opinion, when we're looking at this, part of the original thinking of
Mm-hmm.
creating the fake boob look. So if you just look at society and look at society now, Jamie, look how synthetic they all
Mm-hmm.
look like Barbie dolls with long blonde hair or long dark hair. The dark-haired girls all look the same. The blonde-haired girls, to me, all look the same. Um, with super toned athletic bodies, very dark skin. So they've obviously been tanning or putting all sorts of creams and lotions on themselves, right? Big boobs, big butts. So the whole Kim Kardashian type look, right? J-Lo, all this again, now taking girls away from Twiggy in the 60s, who, ah, it's so true. And I've said that before. I said, real woman. That's what I was saying in the beginning when we were having these discussions, I don't know, old in the beginning about these women, these Victoria's Secret models. I mean, these beautiful girls that all of us go, oh my gosh, what I wouldn't do to look like that in a swimming costume. Meanwhile, it's freaking men. What a mockery they're making. It's freaking men in drag. And all of us girls are going, ooh, I want to look like you. I mean,
And
no,
you can't. You can't. Like
Exactly.
I used to try when I was in college, I used to do like bodybuilding and I did everything in the magazines and I was doing like hours at the gym and martial arts and everything. And it was like, no matter how much effort and diet I stuck to, I'm like, my body does not actually look like these in the magazine. And those were probably trannies too, because you can't actually obtain that with like your female body. Like you can get in really good shape, but like you can't actually obtain
Yeah.
that shape because it doesn't exist in nature if you actually have the body to start with. And so it's your net that's another way to make you feel like you're never enough, you could never obtain it. And it's like, no, I did go to the gym for that long and I still didn't have hips like that. Like it doesn't exist, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's same with the breasts. It
exactly.
doesn't. People, there's men now that actually are turned off by a tear-shaped breast because it looks like something's wrong with it to them, because all the pornography is a round baseball shape and that's what they're programmed to be attractive, which is, unnatural. Me and Sean
Exactly.
just did a show about this that people should probably watch. It'll be out soon. But yeah, we went over like a whole bunch of this fake being programmed to the fake.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's like, so now how many men, because women really do this for their men, right? We say, yes, it's for me, it's for me. Yet when you go out, you wear the shortest skirt, the lowest top, whatever. I mean, that is not to impress you, that's to impress the people around you. And it's so true. Fake boobs, fake, and the butts, right? And even the models doing swimsuit modeling, or not swimsuit, like I watched the whole program, like if they're modeling the gym, like leggings or shorts, they've got these bum things,
Yeah,
these butt. So they put these butt, what do you call, like, looks like a bra.
it's the implant prosthetic, a butt prosthetic, and
Yeah.
people get those actually implanted too, which is people
I'm
die and
like,
it's
you
really dangerous.
gotta be free. No, they put it into the gym pants. So just the model, just like it's not an
Yeah.
operation, just for the photo shoot.
Hmm.
They put them building up the butt. I don't know, there's like butt
It goes
things.
against nature. You can either be a skinny girl with small boobs and no bum, or you can be a curvy girl with big breasts and a bum. But that you can't be a skinny, tiny girl with big boobs and a big bum. Like that doesn't actually
Doesn't
exist
exist.
in
Yeah.
nature without surgery. And so that's why they're always promoting what actually doesn't exist, because you can't obtain it without doing something unnatural like a surgery.
So you're always looking outside of yourself for beauty and perfection. And the whole, it's exactly the opposite. And the whole thing is to come back into your heart space where you find the true beauty. And then you appreciate your body, because each and every one of our bodies are so unique and so beautiful, actually. Every person's body is unique to himself. So, yes, go to the gym, keep fit, feel healthy. Important is how you feel. And I always say, just if you're happy in yourself, your body finds its resonance too. If you're overweight, fat melts away when you're happy. If you're underweight, you suddenly start feeling like you want to eat again. You feel like you want to breathe and walk, and wow, I feel like a swim, and wow, I feel like exercising today. Your body guides you, your spirit guides you through that process, which is quite amazing. But anyway, I know, I mean, I know we chat about the most amazing things when it comes to taking directions and stuff. But I know we wanted to talk about, um,
Kind of neonatal programming and childhood programming for
yeah.
like MK Ultra stuff. So
But
we talked about the programmable state of the mind before the age of 7. And then there's two things that are really important to remember. Sorry, little, come here, Stinky. Somebody's coming up.
hello, Foxy
Um,
Fox.
there's two things that are really
Foxy's joining
important
us tonight.
to remember about children is the concept of identification and internalization. And these are two things that get really exploited by programmers. And so with things like internalization, they can do things like placing in internal structures, internal worlds, like concepts for who an alter should be, how they look, how they act. Like that's an internalization. So they show them things like Disney movies, role models, and then the child will make an internal replica of that internally. And children do this really easily. Like it's a natural thing for kids to do. And so a lot of the programming they do with kids is like they'll reenact little plays or they'll do little psychodramas because it's like it's the acting out, and kids naturally play and play imagination and have tea parties and stuff like that. Like that's how kids actually learn, is by um internalizing and identification. So a lot of programs will be little scenarios. They don't sit the kid down in a classroom how they do in regular society and say you're going to memorize these scripts. Like that wouldn't work. They actually
Yeah.
they put the child through experiences where the child like imagines the script and then internalizes it. And so they know how easy it is for kids to do that with their imagination. And then with identification, it's Scientologists actually understand this really well, and I'm not promoting social
Totally
Scientology,
get it.
but
Uh-huh.
Scientology, they if you read the Scientology books, it's basically programming in reverse. So if you look at Dianetics, how they're saying to get rid of the engrams and how they work and how they get put in the mind, they're basically telling you how MK Ultra programming works, but they're doing it as a therapy to undo it. But like obviously Ron Hubbard knows what he's talking about, right? And so I have the whole set of Scientology books, and they're some of the most interesting books I've ever read. They actually do understand a lot of these things that are not taught in mainstream psychology. So something with identification is it's always a dialectic. So children are always watching, seeing who has more power, who's right, who's being admired, who's getting respect. And so as children, we like identify with one of the parents or we identify with role models. And this is why they have like teen celebrities and stuff, because they know children will identify and then internalize a replicated social learning model of that person. And so that kind of stuff is really key to how they use programming on children. However, it's also combined with much, much darker stuff, which is like, the use of torture, electroshock, lots of physical trauma, which they can hide. Like they don't leave bruises. Like they have little tiny electrode rods and things that don't leave evidence of a child. And they can also do a lot of stuff with virtual reality, which the child will experience as very real, especially if it's combined with sensors on the body. They can do a lot without actually harming the physical body anymore, the way that they used to in really crude methods of MK Ultra. And they can use a lot of drugs and stuff too that can create feelings of sensations of being on fire. There's also powerlessness traumas, like being injected with something that makes you like aware but not able to move. Which, just for people that don't know, that's the kind of stuff they use in the MAID program. So when somebody looks like the MAID program in Canada is government assisted suicide, and people think it's this like
Oh,
really nice thing where the person just is given drugs and they die, and it's like actually they're fully conscious, and it's like the equivalent of being waterboarded and drowning internally, but they can't move, so they seem fine. So just a little thing for people to consider, like how dark this MAID program actually is in Canada. But anyways, they use this kind of traumas on children, right? And so they use all the basic stuff: sensory deprivation, drugs, virtual reality, electric torture. But on top of that, they do specific emotional traumas at specific ages, because
mm,
that's how they program in the worldview, right? So stuff like electroshock and stuff, that can just make compartments that are programmable, and they can program information into that. But for the actual internalization of the worldview of the programmers, they need to use psychodramas. And so am I going too many directions here? Or?
no,
Okay.
I love it. I really, it makes such sense, and no, you're not going into too many different directions, because I think everything is so related, and I love that you actually brought up. Sorry, just to say this here, the MAID program in Canada, because I was actually reading up about that this week, and this assisted suicide, and especially what I'm hearing now, they're bringing that in for the military vets as well, which is a very interesting story all on its own, talking about the vets and stuff like that. But no, I think this is amazing because, and it's so true what you say. It's like the Scientologists, Ron Hubbard has been around for the longest time in my little small town that I grew up in here, I'll tell you, there were people selling those Scientology books for some reason. And this was going back to the 80s when I was like a teenager, right? They were coming around selling the Scientology books, and people were going, he's evil, he's evil. And of course, what did you think I did? Of course, I had to buy the Scientology book because I had to read all about Dianetics, didn't I? And it's so
Mhm.
true what you say. They take it away from what they use the information for, because information is information.
Mhm.
And what it's the intention with which you use. I mean, like the Rosicrucians. I mean, you look at their seven, their understanding on the spiritual laws and stuff like that. I mean, these are beautiful laws. They are universal laws. There's nothing wrong with the law of extreme, for example. Like, right? But what do they do when they experience, for example, when they test the laws of extreme? Right? So that's where you understand the difference between the light and the dark type thing. So they're using this information for nefarious purposes, but it doesn't mean the information is not good, and the research is not good. And we must always remember that. And I love that you said that, Jaymee, to that you've read that, because so have I many years ago.
Mhm.
Um, but as you say, one of the most informative books um, are from the Scientologists, because they do know their stuff. Unfortunately, though, they use it for their own purposes. But when we understand really the other side of it, it's understanding humanity, it's understanding how things work, it's understanding the makeup of who we are and the miracle, actually. So you can look at it as a miracle and go, wow. Or you can say, how can I steal that?
Yeah,
So,
it's everything in the occult is a inverted version
mm,
of God's creation, and it is
no,
being used against you. So you not knowing about it because you think it's evil, and there is a lot of Christians in that boat that are like, I don't want to know anything, it's all evil. And it's like, okay, but it's only being used as evil. There's an original version of it, which is neutral and actually in God's creation. Like it has to do with actual
yeah,
laws of physics, like you know what I mean? And
exactly.
so um and the people that have gone and studied it have chosen to use it for evil, and it's actually being used against you, it's being used against all of us for evil. So if you
Exactly.
think that not understanding it is going to protect you, or that it's somehow evil what they've taken and made into evil, right? Like I had somebody say to me, oh, I don't want to know anything about the chakras. And I said, well, like why? Because like obviously the knowledge of it could be used for manipulation, and it is by Satanists, but also it's
Of
actually
course.
just part of physiology. Like
Your
you can
body.
look at it
Yeah,
on EKG. You've had an orgasm. Like if you don't think there's an energy center at certain parts of your body, like that's ridiculous. Like there obviously is. And so understanding this actually gives you power. And then but I'm also
exactly.
not the other way where I'm saying, oh, do whatever you want, because I think this stuff really needs to be approached as a sacred thing that can be dangerous. And so I don't think you should just go and use all these things. Like you should understand the potential for good and evil of all of them and make sure you're using them in the right way, right? But I think
Exactly.
this black and white thinking, and it's like it's only putting you in a position of ignorance, and ignorance doesn't keep you safe, and cowardice doesn't keep you safe. So
Totally.
two things is like, yeah, the Scientology books is a really good example of that. And the way that I got the entire gold leafed hardcover complete collector's item of like 15 Scientology books is because I worked at a library where the lady who worked there was an extreme fundamentalist who like wouldn't put anything on the shelves that was anything to do with like anything outside of Christian literature or cats. That was her two things that she liked, and she only put that on the shelf. So she was controlling knowledge, which I think is inherently wrong, either no matter what it is. I think people can decide for themselves. Anyway, she had this book was sent to the library by the Mother Center of Scientology as a donation, and she said, "Oh, I'm not putting that on the shelf. It's evil. Nobody should read that," and whatever. And so it was in the back room, and like, of course, I was like, "Oh, like." can I take it? Like, if you don't want to put it on the shelf, like, I'll take it. And she said, as long as I prayed first, she said, you can take it. And I said, okay, deal. And I took them home, and yeah, they're some of the most interesting books I read, but I also know how they are used because of my MK Ultra studying these, like, but not reading them isn't going to keep you safe. This, I just don't understand how people, I can't. I'm always arguing with
Knowledge is
people.
power. It's so true. Knowledge is power. You've got to empower yourself. You've got to give yourself I mean, you don't have to go and make a study of it, but give yourself the basic understanding of what things are. Because then we can see, as we understand how these guys have used the energy for nefarious purposes, we can absolutely, and that's why on my other channel, Solutions, I mean, it's like reclaiming our symbols. We are taking back the true essence of symbolism. Symbolism is not satanic. It's not. It's the original way that God spoke to us is through sacred geometry, symbols, frequency, sound, vibration, right? The whole universe is created from geometry. How can we think it's not? How do we say Kundalini is evil when Kundalini is the energy force that resides in your own body? And it's exactly what you're saying. When you are ready for a consciousness or a transformation of consciousness, that's when Kundalini activates in your body. And then everything expands, your consciousness expands. But just because it's been used by the cabal for dark magic and sex magic, and the kids have had their Kundalini and everything stolen from them,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the power force, you see, is the Kundalini in the body. And everyone says Kundalini is evil. I'm going, how can you say Kundalini is evil? It's in your body. It's an energy force that lives within your body. What people have done with Kundalini and the theft thereof is evil. And if you
Mm-hmm.
try and force a early Kundalini activation in your body, you're probably going to feel like you're going mad, like
Which
anything.
they do. They do
Yeah,
force
of
it
course
in
they
MK
do. Of
Ultra. Yeah.
course they do. Of course
Yeah,
they do.
that's what this sodomy is doing,
Yes,
right? And so
yes,
people saying, "Oh, I don't want to know anything about Kundalini because that's going to keep me safe." It's like, well, no, because it's actually something that's being inverted and exploited for like control. And so I don't know. I feel like I'm always in the middle of these arguments. Same with the symbols. People see a symbol and they say, "Oh my God, it's a swirl or it's a pedophile." And it's like, yeah, it can be. And so we need to be symbol literate and we need to know when the symbols are used for evil. But symbols are elusive. So it's like a red flag. It just flags something, right? So if you see a symbol, you should say, hey, that's a symbol that can be used as a symbol for evil. It doesn't mean it necessarily always is. So you should say, taking note of that. But just because you
yeah,
see the symbol and you say, oh, everybody that has that is this and everybody that has that, well, then you're just being like a fundamentalist where everything's a devil, everything is evil. And it's like, again, going to that other extreme, you actually lose discernment and the ability to actually say, okay, I see a red flag here. I'm going to note it and I'm going to be aware that this may or may not be. Right. But thinking every time you
exactly.
see something it is, that also gives you a false sense of security and you're trusting yourself to just put everything in the same category, which actually is making you very vulnerable.
Exactly. Exactly. It puts you in that space of fearing everything. And when you fear things, you're going to attract exactly that what you fear. That's the way energy works. It's so true. And we've just got to, recognize these things, become aware, become literate. As you say, I like the way you put that. Become symbol literate and understand what it is you're seeing and understand what it is you're potentially looking at as well. And,
Potentially, that's the key
mm,
word, right? Like,
mm.
yeah, I think people now that this symbol stuff has come out, they just think anybody that has any little symbol is like, I mean, somebody wrote in the comments, I had this butterfly picture in the background. And it is kind of weird because it almost does have some MK Ultra. There's one of the butterflies has a bunch of faces in it and stuff. But like I just randomly found that at a garage sale. And I liked it because it was so big and the colors. It's not a conspiracy. It doesn't mean that I'm a monarch just because I happen to have a picture of
Exactly.
some butterflies. I'm wearing a butterfly on my scarf. It's just, you know what I mean? But people are so quick to pounce and say, oh my gosh, it's always
Make
misjudged. Well,
everything evil.
right.
That's
But I mean, also, if you're going somewhere for counseling and you see the monarch symbol on their webpage, you might want to be like, I'm going
yes.
to explore this further just in case. It's like, don't just be so arrogant to black and white everything.
Yeah, it's so true. But keep your eyes open and be
Exactly.
aware of what's going on around you. Keep your head on a swivel, and we have to really be aware, but not fearful. There's a difference between being aware and oh, I'm so scared. That's so wrong. We've got to change that. But it's super interesting. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I know that we have again spoken about so many gorgeous and interesting things, but I'm not sure we've probably carried on for way over an hour already. Is there anything that maybe you want to just say or end off, or do you have anything else? I know, yeah, there's so much still.
Yeah, I feel like we could call it a day and maybe do like a part two on
Yeah,
specifically neonatal to like age 7 programming, because there's actually quite a bit more I could go into about some of the specific programming there. Like I feel like we kind of just got some of it. I could definitely do a whole other show just specifically on kind of some of the things they do, some of the stages that they do it at, why they do it, the effect that it has. And the reason this is so important is because this is the program that lays in the worldview for the adult person. And so when you're dealing with survivors now or seeing people, like, you have to understand what was done before the age of 7 to understand why they're acting that way now, and that's specifically why they do
exactly.
it, because it goes into the unconscious. It's not questioned anymore, and it drives behavior. And so a lot of times when we're dealing with people, we're actually dealing with the effects of programming before the age of 7. And so I think we can just kind of leave it there for today. I think we gave people a lot to think about and terms to look up and things to look into. And, if people have questions, you can put them in the chat or send them to Chantelle, and we can, like, about more specific things we can talk about. But yeah, we can branch off into a lot of the other areas of programming from ages 1 to 7, maybe do like another show on that. So
I'd love that because that's also the development age of the root chakra, right? The
yeah, we
first
can
chakra
talk
in the
about the
body.
chakra, like, ages going to, and then you can
Yes.
look into, I think it's Eric Erickson did the developmental stages of children that's used kind of as a model. And then also we can go into some of the gifted programs for children and gifted children stuff, like, so it all really connects to, but this is where the cabal puts their energy, because they know if they get in here, they set the stage for what they want later. Like, they're not going to waste
Right.
their energy on adults. They want the children before the age of 7, and as far back, even generationally, that they can go back on that, the better for them. But they do very specifically have stages, developmental stages, that they do a trauma at each developmental stage, because God made us with kind of time stamped little evolution points, which connects to the chakras and the chakra ages and stuff. Like, those are kind of time stamped in our DNA. So they've identified what these actual specific things are, and then they do a trauma at each one. So we can go into that maybe more next
I
time.
love
But
that.
it's
Yeah.
very deliberate. Like, the ages that things are done are very deliberate, and it is based on the natural human being having time stamped developmental stages to be activated. So yeah, if people
Wow.
have questions to be more specific, I'm happy to. It's, yeah, sometimes there's just so much. I feel like I'm just a fire hydrant, and I just start like talking all over, just talking all over the
No, no, no. I follow you all over. Don't you worry. For me, it's super because everything is so connected. It really, really is so connected. And we're wow. Again, I could start a whole topic now and just go off for another half an hour, and I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
It's.
yeah,
I think we gave people actually quite a bit to think
yeah,
about for next time, if they want to look up some of those terms, and maybe if they have questions, then we can, next time we'll do sort of a part 2 on this specific age thing, and then more about the chakra ages, developmental stages, but
absolutely,
like the Kundalini stuff, like that is very much a part of what they are inverting as well.
totally.
So yeah, we can
Yeah.
go definitely into that more next time. But I think, yeah, let's call it a day for today.
Jaymee, thank you so much. And Foxy, thank you for letting your mommy spend 2 hours with us tonight. Not one. I asked for 1 hour permission. And Fox said yes. And he's been very generous with Jaymee tonight.
He
Thank you,
said, because
Fox.
I get my treat and a walk right after for being a good boy the whole time.
Did you see his face just looking at us? It's so adorable.
He knows what he has coming. He said, I was a good boy the whole time.
Thank you, everybody. Great show. Guys, this is such important information. Yes, Fox, tell them. So please like, share, subscribe. This is really information we've got to get out there. And I love that we're doing it in the stages and just kind of yeah. And when we understand it, we know how to flip that grid again. We know how to flip the nest. We know how to heal it. We know how to do the opposite because all we have to do is change the inversion. Whatever has been inverted, we just do the opposite of. So, guys, thank you. Jaymee, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. All your details and stuff are in the description area. So anyone want to get a hold of Jaymee, what have you, all the details are there. And we will have you back in a week's time talking about phase two. Listen to me, part two of this particular installment, where we actually go into the programming that they do at the different ages. Sure. Yeah. See you then. Take
Bye,
care,
everyone.
everybody.
Thanks for listening.
God bless you all. Mwah.